Hey everybody! Today we are going to learn about creating your own custom brushes in Illustrator. And before we begin, we should probably review methods to create lines or strokes using Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to go ahead and open up Illustrator. I'm going to reset my Essentials panel just so I have similar to what you have on your screen. I'm using CS6. There's a few tools in here if you're using CS4 that you may not recognize or may not have if you're using CS4. Let's start by making a new artboard. And brushes in Illustrator are actually really cool. They take a little bit of time to master, but once you get the idea behind them, they really can speed up your workflow. We're going to start with an 8.5 by 11 inch artboard here. No bleed, just one. And we're going to hit OK. And that will give us our artboard. And now we get to have some fun. All right. Now, there's a few ways to make a stroke. One of them being your pen tool. Now, as you know, we have a fill and we have a stroke. A stroke is denoted by the square around the box here. We also have a menu for that, and that's called the stroke menu. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. That will give us some options. Now, I don't really want a fill for this. I just want to use a black stroke, so I'm going to turn off my fill. And I'm going to just begin to draw some lines. And I'm going to use the Bezier curve here. And what you'll notice we get is a pretty boring, pretty uniform flat line. Illustrator, again, using the strokes panel, it's also right here, you can see denoted by 3 lines. Once we select it, will allow us to change the width of that stroke. All right. Now, if I don't select it and I change the width, nothing happens. What I need to do is highlight, change the width, and then you'll see the change. Now, I'm going to put mine up to 5 so we can see some of these. Now, this is the variable width profile. This will change the tapering of the line. So let's go ahead and duplicate it by using our Alt key or Option key. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to change the uniform width of this line to something a little more unique. Let's go ahead and duplicate that again. And what I want you to see is all the different variants that you can get with these brushes. This one has a square top. If I zoom in here, you guys can see there is a lot of changes going on. This is a double taper. So very, very interesting stuff. We also have the ability to change the style of the brush. Now this will, change the uniform back to what it was, but we have a lot of options, one of which is this really fake charcoal looking brush. I think it comes standard with this little feather brush. This is a brush we're going to talk about in a bit, and then we have like little dotted line brush for whatever you may want to use. Now, we can add to these brushes, so that's really the first place we're going to explore here. And we can, if we open this hidden little menu right here, you're going to notice we have a brush library, and we have tons of brushes. And when I lecture you guys, maybe 50% of the time I use my Wacom tablet, so I have brushes involved there. I have Bristle Brushes, which are those interesting brushes that look like they actually have heads on them. Artistic brushes, I can load some paintbrushes. Here they are. Let's open them up, and we can get some painterly-like lines. Now, you're not fooling anybody with these. These do not look like paintbrushes. They have the appearance or the outer silhouette of a paintbrush, but overall, maybe that one, but not really. All right, so those are our paintbrushes. Now, that is one way to create a stroke. We know how to edit them. We know how to change the opacity of them, and so forth, all up here in your toolbar. All right. Now, we have a couple more options here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these. And I'm going to go down to the next tool that will allow me to draw a line. That's a shape tool. Now, our line tool, probably not the fastest way to draw a curved line, but again, if I have my stroke turned off and I use my knowledge of the Illustrator interface, I can very easily, with maybe a bit more work, go in and add to this stroke. And see, once I have that, now I can go in and change it up. It's a few more steps, but you may need to get to that point at some venture. Then we have our paintbrush. Now our paintbrush is interesting. it's a free-form kind of paintbrush. I still have that one brush loaded here. I'm going to go back to basic, and you notice Illustrator is really wonky with that. You have to go and kind of, there we go. That's what we want. And what you'll notice is when I draw, my drawing is really, really harsh. When I let go, it smooths it up. Great little function in Illustrator. Now this is controlled by double-clicking on your paintbrush tool. I've just double-clicked on there, and I get fidelity and smoothness. Now the higher I put these numbers, and the more fidelity I have in them, the less room for error. It's going to straighten my line a little bit for me. So that's a really great tool. Most of these tools in Illustrator, if you double-click on them, you will get some sort of option. And, you know, we can lower this to a fidelity of 1. And you can see, you know, there's not much shifting. We have some smoothness. Pretty neat. I'm going to hit Command-Z to get back here. Double-click again. Let's do a smoothness of 100 and a fidelity of 1, and let's see what we get. You can see it really changes my line, doesn't it? And that's really, really nice. I mean, it gives me pretty decent line quality. Still not what I'm looking for. If I change the uniform profile width and all that fun stuff, I start to get something maybe close to what I want. But to be honest with you, these brushes are still pretty cold, pretty narrowed out. So that's that type of brush. And if we go below that, we have the pencil tool. That gives us a more harsh line. Now, if I double-click on the pencil tool, I have a smooth. I can erase that. A lot of people, I have the fidelity options, will actually accidentally be on the pencil tool, and they'll be drawing. The pencil tool is really good if you have, like, shading. So if you have, you know, let's draw a rectangle real quick. You have a rectangle, and I'm going to use my draw modes. I'm going to draw inside. Pretty cool little tip here. And I'm going to go and I want to draw, you know, I want a crosshatch or something. Make like a Shel Silverstein book, if you guys know who that is. There you go. And I can draw inside, and it'll give me a nice little crosshatch, and it's kind of a little more organic. Basically, it makes a clipping mask for you. All right, and that was the drawing modes. I'm going to make sure I go back to draw normal. Underneath that's the Blob brush tool. Shift B is the command. This acts pretty much like the brush in Photoshop, but what this will do, it looks like it made a brush and a stroke, but what this actually did is make a fill. You can see it changed it. It turned off the stroke, turned on the fill, and it basically is like taking a stroke and doing object expand. So if I did a traditional brush here, switch these back, and I drew this, and maybe we'll make it a little bigger, and I want to object expand appearance. There you go. If I took this brush, they're essentially now the same thing because I expanded the appearance of this brush. This is a stroke. Let me redo here. That is a fill. That is a shape at that point. All right, so that's that brush. This is a really cool brush for inking, especially because if you use your bracket keys on your keyboard next to the letter capital P, or lowercase p, I guess it depends how you look at it, it will get bigger and smaller. You can't do this with the Illustrator brush. So this will allow me to, you know, have some pretty cool line quality. And I'm just hitting that brush as I go. I can even go a little lower here. Get a little bigger with that Blob brush. And you know, if you want, again, you want quick hatching or something like that, you can do that. All right, let's go ahead and clear our artboard. Let's highlight everything, hit delete. All right, so those are your basic brushes. Now you do have some options. Let's go back to the pen tool. Let's see what we get here. Make sure I change it back to a stroke, and I'm gonna draw a brush. Whoa, having some fun here. Hit spacebar, and I'm going to use the width tool. The width tool is very interesting. What this will do is allow me to create a custom taper, and it's a lot more intimidating when you start it than you guys may think. What it actually is doing is all you do is grab an anchor point and pull it in or out, and by doing that you can adjust the width of the piece. And you can even go inside where there's no anchor points and really make some amazing custom brushes. So if you want your character to have maybe very, very thin hair or little chin hair or something like that, you can use the width tool, the varied width tool, to do that. There we go. I'm going to hover outside of it and kind of maybe make it stand up here. There we go. Cool. So you can see, very, very easy to use. You just got to keep in track of where all you're putting these little width tool points, because it puts a little point underneath. We have other things like the warp tool. That will allow us to kind of go in and scraggle something up. This is really great too, because sometimes you don't want to create these effects. You just want to kind of go in and say, I want a twirly hair, and I don't really know how to draw that, so I'm going to do it this way. If I keep holding down my mouse key, I'm going to go maybe to the bloat tool, and that will kind of bloat that up a little bit. Very, very fun effects. We have some really crazy ones like the wrinkle tool. It makes it really good. And you can see it's actually breaking my line right there, so I better be careful. Eventually, you will break your lines, and it will not look too hot. All right. If you may have noticed when I held this down, there is a little tear-off menu. This will allow me to take all these and kind of play with them outside. If I hit the X, it just goes back to normal here. So we have the ability to play with brushes like that. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that. I like to create my own brushes, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to use a kind of a bunch of different methods to do so. On top of that, I want to teach you how you can combine strokes and you can combine different elements of Illustrator using multiple fills, multiple strokes to create some very cool shapes. So let's start with just a piece of artwork. Okay, I'm going to open my layers palette. I'm going to have two layers. On the first layer, I'm going to double click it. I'm going to name this art here. Okay, and then on the next layer, I'm going to call this work. Apparently, I do not know how to capitalize. All right, I'm going to lock the work layer, open up the art layer here, and I'm going to do File, Place. Now, I went ahead and I scanned in an image from my computer. And what I'm going to do is go and find that sketch here. And you can see it's a really rough sketch of this girl. And it's messy and dirty and all sorts of stuff. And I want to take this to a vector level. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to place it into Illustrator. As soon as I do that, I really like to just lock my layer. Unlock the work layer, and now I can start working. Now, if I use my standard brush, we can absolutely go in and trace these lines. And you can see it's actually not too difficult to do this with. That's one method you guys may want to use on your projects. And, you know, there's really a lot of room for error. If I screw up, no big deal. And I'll show you, right now I have no line quality. Line quality is the thickness and thinness of line, if you remember from previous lectures. So right now, I have a really, really bad line quality. It's all the same, it's uniform, but, you know, if I take my brush and I start applying profiles to them, I can start to get some really amazing results. So I'll go to this one and maybe apply, I don't know, let's see. Let's do a basic line and then apply that to it. Maybe make the stroke like 4. Now I'm getting some really nice effects. So I do have the ability to customize it. I would go and I can trace this whole character. I can really fill it in. I could use the pen tool and do that. Now, if at any point you want to make your own brush, I'm going to delete all that, this is what you would do. All right, and this is a trick I learned from some of my colleagues, some of my friends who are professional illustrators, and that saves them tons and tons of time. So the line quality, I keep having to go up here and change it. It's not too workflow beneficial, so it doesn't speed things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make some shapes. Okay, I'm going to start with a ellipse tool, and I'm on my work layer. It's not going to affect the picture, and I'm going to go ahead and just do a fill, and I'm going to create kind of an oval here. All right, I'm going to move this out of the way so you guys can see this a little more. All right, now that I have the oval, I have a few options. I'm going to hit my A key on my keyboard, and I'm going to select the 2 endpoints. So I'll do them both separately. convert to linear, convert to linear. Now this is a really cool method, guys. This method is interesting because what it basically does is it will create a nice brush, it will create a uniform brush for you, and it will give you some really nice line quality. And that's, you know, really important. You're going to see what it does in a second here. Now I usually make varied widths here, so I'm going to go down and I'm going to have one that's very skinny, very skinny. There we go. And then one that's kind of fat. Maybe we'll go one more step up here. And what I'm doing when I select these, I'm holding Shift, and if I hold Alt, it will do something. If I hold Command, it will do something. But usually Shift, Alt, or Command give you scalability. All right, now I have 3 essential strokes here. I want to convert these into brushes individually. So I'm going to open up my brushes panel. Very easy to find. It's a little case of brushes. Now, this is probably one of the easiest, most underused techniques in all of Illustrator. And for that, all you have to do is click and drag. So again, make sure your black handle's on, grab it, click, drag it in, and now you have some options. Now I want you guys to read the tutorials I provided for you, and I want you to really look into what's a, I can never say this, calligraphy brush, what's a scatter brush, what's an art brush, and so forth, what's a pattern brush. We're going to use an art brush for these. So I'm going to hit OK, and I want you to leave everything the same. Now sometimes I mess with tint and shades, that's great, but I'm going to just add the brush. And I'm going to do the same for the other 2. Art brush, OK. I'll do tint just to show you it's not the end of the world. And then art brush, and we'll do none on this one. All right, now watch. Delete. They're gone. They're still here though. What I can do if I ever want to edit these is grab it and pull it back out, and there's my shape. You can actually do that with all of these. They're just shapes. So if you ever need to edit them, you drag them back in and keep going that way. So now let's look what these brushes do. Let's go to our brush panel. Let's set up a smaller stroke brush. Let's make sure the fill is turned off. And remember, brushes only do strokes. They don't do fills. The Blob brush does a fill. And now, look at the line quality here. Do you guys see the difference immediately? I haven't messed with any tapers or anything. Here, let me get B for brush. Now, if you guys may have noticed, I had an X on my screen. And I'm going back and forth from it. This is because my caps lock was on. So if you turn your cap lock on, it will give you kind of that X pattern. That's my medium brush, and you can see my big brush does not really do much. So now, watch what happens. Let me get my skinny brush here, and let's retrace the same areas. Look at the elegance that you guys are getting. Now, when you're tracing, I really suggest you try to make sure that your paths overlap. So they're touching each other. There we go. And we're going to kind of add this a bit, but do that. I'll show you kind of a finished product I had in a bit here, but all sorts of fun stuff. You can switch it to your bigger brush if maybe you want her jawline to be bigger. Every woman's fantasy to have a huge jawline, apparently. So I'm going to change that. Now, you may have noticed what I just did. I can just hit the brush and it will change it to that specific brush. Really great tip. There you go. So I would go and I would trace all of this. And you can see if I turn my artboard off, slowly but surely I'm getting some sort of artwork. I have a lot of work to do. I'd have to get my pencil or my lines and do the shading, but I'll kind of break down a drawing I did just in a few seconds here. Alright, so that's with the custom brush. Let's look at what this drawing could look like afterwards. So we're going to open, and we're going to go to the sketch I've already created here. And here it is. So what I've done, just using the brush tool that I made, and some other brushes here, I've went ahead and I've created this character. Now you can see in this character, I have some shading, I have some other options here. We're going to go over some of this when we do the live trace demo too. But I have a nice line quality. I'm by no means done with this, but I have a good start. And, you know, I went from essentially, let's turn this off. This sketch starting to get something pretty neat. All right, and it wasn't too hard. It was just the methods you saw. These are actually little lines that I used and I duplicated using my Option key, and I just kept duplicating them and over and over and over again until it gave me some shading, which was really nice. So you can see really cool results. All right, well, let's say we want to use this brush tool, and we're going to open a new document while I talk about this, to speed up our workflow even more. What if I asked you to create a palm tree? Well, you probably would go, okay, yeah, I can do that. That's pretty easy. But then what if I asked you to create a whole row of palm trees, and I want each one to be unique? Well, you'd probably be like, get lost. I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. I'm going to just duplicate the same palm tree. Maybe you'd think, oh, I'll use the warp tool or something like that. Well, let's streamline our workflow. So let's go ahead and make elements of a palm tree. So I'm going to go ahead and make the stem here. For this one, I don't want a stroke actually. I'm going to just use shapes to do this. And we're going to do something pretty unique. So we're going to get that kind of palm tree brown. And, you know, we have options here. We can create clipping masks and create little shapes and whatnot of our tree. What I usually like to do is I like to taper the top of one of the lines here. Let's do that. Let's pull that in a little bit. And let's grab that one. Pull that in. All right, so we have a nice tapered line. We did. There it goes. Hit V on my keyboard to get back. That's kind of going to be our stem of our palm tree. And like I said, you could go in and add little triangles on this. You can, you know, I don't even know if this is going to work. Let's do paint inside. Let's grab, I don't know. I don't even know if the Blob brush will work on the paint inside. Let's find out. We're going to wing this, guys. This is what we would normally do in class, so we will do it here. So I'm going to change my color here. Let's see. This may not work. We'll find out. And we're going to... It may not work because what's happening is every time I change this, it's going to change the color of that. So I think that's what's going to happen. What I wanted to do is kind of like paint little triangles in it. I can go in and if I want to make those triangles, just get my pen tool here and kind of add those to it. I need to set my drawing mode back to normal. Let's get out of here real quick and let's go to the pen tool. There we go. So if I want to add little options here, let's zoom in. You guys probably can't see this at home. And let's click away and let's do we'll go lighter in this case. Pen tool. Close our path there. There we go. And you guys can see what I'm getting at here. And then simply duplicate and have some fun with it. Make sure you hold down your duplicate key here. Now at any point, what I'm going to do, and this is just another little shape, I can group these, I can kind of play around with these all I want, I can make them longer or smaller. But eventually I'm going to probably want to kind of group them together just to make sure I can move my palm tree. Alright, so there's my palm tree. I could work on this all day, but I'm not. Let's do the palm frond. Okay, so let's do a circle again, and let's make this one green. Now we're going to do this one a little interesting. We're going to actually kind of do the same thing we did with our brush profile. We're going to convert those sides. And I'm going to duplicate this at this point. I have kind of an idea of what I want. Actually, you know what? Well, that would be uniform. Let's try something special here. Let's do our tool again. This one, I'm going to just honestly make these white here so you guys can see them, maybe black on this screen. There we go. Okay, get that. Now what I'm doing is I'm using the techniques you should have reviewed and learned last week. There's a lot of duplication going on here. I'm about to use the Pathfinder, which you guys should be very, very aware with now. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the Pathfinder to remove these little portions. So I'll open up the Pathfinder, move it where I can see it, and then go through, and I just want to basically, I don't want to trim them there, but I want to minus the front here. So again, we have the ability to go in and use the Pathfinder. That would be the intersection. Well, that one looks pretty good. And kind of take away these options. And you can see I need to bring these to the front here. So I'm going to right click and say arrange, bring to front. There we go. And then I just go on my way. It doesn't like when I do two of them. Oops, wrong way. There we go. And that's good for now. I don't feel like going through all those. Alright, so now what I can do is I can duplicate this. So what I'm going to do is edit, and I'm going to do this kind of the traditional way. And I want to Command D, let's see, that's another program. Command C, Command V, there we go. And I'm going to make this darker. So let's do, I don't know guys, what do you think? Maybe like that color, maybe a little darker so you guys can see it, that color. And I'm going to kind of lay it on top and kind of look at it, and I think I'm going to use a shape as kind of a cookie cutter. So I'm going to cut this in half. This is going to be a very tricky kind of move, but if you guys played with your Pathfinder, you should know exactly what I'm going to do here. So now that I have this, what I can do is use that as a cookie cutter and just say trim, and now the A tool here, I have half of a palm frond, so I can put it right on here, and it gives me kind of a nice thing. All it is, guys, is cutting shapes. It's cookie cutters. It's making cookies. You guys do this for the holidays all the time, probably, but very, very cool techniques. Now we're ready to make these brushes. Now the fun starts. Go to your brush palette, open it up, grab everything in here, drag it in, make it an art brush. That looks good. Now you're going to see something. You're going to look at this and go, okay, that doesn't look the same. So no matter where I go here, it kind of looks just green. Well, that's because it's pulling in just the top portion. So what we have to do is figure out why. Well, let's go ahead and, I don't know, let's group these together. Maybe that will help. So now that I have these grouped, I can move them. I want to make sure I'm grabbing both ends here. There we go. Let's try moving those in. There it is. So the grouping did the work. Hit delete on that. Now I better group these too. So object group. Make sure you can move them. They're all moving together. Good. Pull that in. Art brush. Everything looks good. Cool. I can hit delete. Now we're ready. Now this is fun, guys. Okay. The palm tree forest. You guys ready for this? What I'm going to do is I'm not going to really worry about the color too much, but I'm going to draw a line. Well, that looks familiar, doesn't it? And what I want to make sure is when I draw up and down, it really gives me the illusion of a palm tree. Now, I have a really weird profile. Remember, I played with this last time, so I'm going to keep mine kind of in the middle. I'm going to draw some trees. This one maybe I want to be kind of arced over, and maybe one, let's try it, a little more weird. Okay, maybe it's a Dr. Seuss tree. But now I have these trees where I can just draw them and make sure I go down rather than up with my stroke. And I can draw out a forest rather quickly. It gets better. You can see if I click away here and get my new brush and load it with my tree leaf, and I'm going to lower this to maybe 0.25. That's maybe too small. 0.5. There we go. Now, look how fast this is. A little prep work goes a long way. Now, you guys can create these Illustrator graphics in a really speedy time, and that, eventually in the long run gets you guys more money. Now what I'll normally do is I'll have a few different shapes of leaves. I wouldn't just keep them all this way. But hopefully you guys see how that really helps. And you know, I can even turn these down really small if I want to. And let's go back to the brush here. Maybe we'll make little ones, little plants on the floor. Pretty cool, huh? So hopefully what you guys have learned today with this is just its workflow. Illustrator has also given us the ability with CS5 and above to do some really cool bristle brush options. So that's the thing I'm going to end on right now. And the bristle brushes are awesome. First we need to load them. So we don't want to paint with these anymore, but I'm going to go to my brushes palette here, open brush library, bristle brush library. And these are the closest thing you're going to get to kind of a real world brush. So let's go ahead and let's start by drawing an ellipse. Hold shift to kind of constrain it. I don't really want to stroke on this. Maybe I'll get like a nice neutral base here if I can hit the right button for you guys. Come on, double click, thank you. Sometimes you just got to talk to it, tell it who's boss. There it is. All right. Now I'm going to do my paint inside trick that I showed you guys. So paint inside, and I'm going to get my brushes, and I'm going to go and find some ways to do the bristle brush. Now you can see that's still a stroke, okay? And that stroke is, you know, it's still working. But what I want to do, and I'm going to go kind of back here actually, I think I'm going to just keep it, there we go, that's what I want. Keep it this way. Draw inside here. There we go. It gives me a lot more options, and it allows me to really utilize these brushes, and you can see, and create some really cool stuff. So here we go. Let's delete this real quick. That's bugging me. Get the brush. Let's get some, that one right there. Maybe we'll make it a little bigger. And now you can get really nice painterly effects using Illustrator. We'll go and put some blues, purplish color in there. Use the fan brush. You can kind of like pretend you're Bob Ross and you're making happy little trees, whatever you feel like, you know, painting. Now Illustrator has given us the ability to do that. I'm going to lower this real quick. And these have a lot more resistance and reaction than a brush normally would, that you would by default pick up with in Illustrator. And they also work over one another rather nicely. They react to shapes by using the draw behind tool or draw inside tool very nicely. You know, if you're using specific kind of methods of that's really nice. You can use clipping masks to help clip those out at any point. And the cool thing about them is, they're just strokes. Now, if I expand them right here, they're going to turn into fills, and then they get a little messy. But you guys can see where it is very, very manageable. So, you know, overall, what we can do with Illustrator and brushes is actually really, really nice. We have the ability to, you know, just kind of work with colors and work with all sorts of, you know, patterns and overlays and fun stuff like that now, and really get a nice technique. You know, if I want to make shading now, it's not too hard. I can use my bracket keys again on these bristle brushes, and I can go in and shade really quickly, or give the illusion of a painting or whatnot. One of the biggest things you guys will realize once you start working in the real world, clients always want vector stuff. I mean, it's scalability, like we talked about in the one lecture, but they always want stuff that looks hand painted. And previously, this was very, very hard to do because of basically the tool sets. So now I can, you know, go in there, I can keep adding elements. I just need to make sure I deselect my brush there, and I can really have some fun with Illustrator, where before this wouldn't be possible. Just keep going and getting the brushes here. And that's just making a clipping mask, like I said. All right, guys, so that is that. Now the final thing I want to talk to you about is if you're applying strokes, and I know I said this was the final thing, but I lied. I forgot I had mentioned this. So I'm going to take an ellipse here, and I want to talk about one of the coolest tools in Illustrator. We're going to learn more about this as we go on. This is the Appearance tool. The Appearance tool is really, really nice. What is the Appearance tool? Well, the Appearance tool is the ability to add multiple strokes and fills, and it's kind of your one-stop shop for changing elements rather than going up here and selecting and whatnot. What we can do is on the fly change specific elements. Now let's say you want the opacity for the overall thing to change, so it'll open up transparency. Great. Well, let's say you just want the fill to be basically lower. I can do that too. I can lighten up just the middle but keep the other parts steady. The other thing I can do is add new effects, new fills, or new strokes. So now I'm going to add a red stroke, and I'm going to make that smaller. I can click and drag them like layers on top of one another. And we'll make this one a little, let's make this huge because it's behind it. And what you can see, what I have here, let's click away. Now I have the ability to really change things up, don't I? I can give different strokes. I can make like a custom vintage sign. The whole time I can still use my stroke profiles. If I click on that, it opens up. I can make these arrowheads. I can make these dashes. I can really give the illusion of like a nice custom shape. There it goes. And that's all just by clicking on these. I can just click on this stroke and say, you know what, I really want you to be this profile, and I want, you know, a little hand on this one. There you go. Now, the biggest trick is, what you'll see, is you just have to make sure that you're selecting the object. There it is right there. And if you don't select that object, you're not going to get it. It's going to be just really ugly, which it kind of looks like right now. But this appearance panel will save you. Keep this in mind. Again, if I want to do a drop shadow or a 3D effect, we're going to learn about 3D effects later, but let's go ahead and let me just get the text tool here and type something. We're going to make this word 3D here, and I'm going to go ahead and scale this up, and I'm going to add a 3D effect, and we're going to extrude it and hit OK. So now we have kind of this three-dimensional word, and most likely probably better with a different color. Now I can go, and anytime here I want to change this, I can simply say, you know what, I didn't like that, make it super, super big. We'll learn about this. That's way too big, actually, but there we go. And there we go. We can also add a stroke to this. That will change up the profile a little bit. We can lower the stroke. We can add 2 strokes to it. Just keep going with it. And get some really great results, huh? I usually put the bigger stroke underneath the smaller stroke here. And all of a sudden, you have some really bad clip art. But you have the ability to make some really cool effects. So, pretty awesome stuff. You know, whether it's going to be adding a drop shadow to it or, you know, anything like that. I may actually crash my system here. There it is. We have some ability to do that. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the intro to brushes, strokes, all things brushes and strokes and appearance tabs and all that fun stuff. I hope you guys apply this to your projects upcoming. It will be really beneficial to help with your workflow. All right, guys, I will talk to you next time.